which is mathematically sound. So here today you are going to be learning so much mathematics. So in this class, this is the approximately the last class which has this much amount of mathematics and so many ideas of mathematics needed to you work out this class. After these class, very few ideas of basic probability will do and basic permutation and combination at the level of 11th standard mathematics. Only those ideas will be sufficient for the next all the next classes from tomorrow. But for today's class, a little bit knowledge of partial differentiation and total differentiation is required. So we'll be talking about those things, but I suppose that at least all of you know what is a partial differentiation and what is a total differentiation. So I will be assuming that if you don't know, just wait after the lecture and we'll be talking about that. I will not be explaining those parts in the lecture during the lecture, but we'll be talking about those things after the lecture. So yes. And as usual, I'll be giving you windows to ask your question. So I'll be teaching and will be giving you some windows to ask your questions. Okay. So today's topic is Liouville's equation. So it is Liouville's equation. But before that, let's have a quick recap of yesterday's class. We were talking about something called system. So what is a system? Anything which we are studying is called system. Anything which we are studying is system. Now we can always represent that system as a point in phase space. So this is a phase space with generalized coordinate and generalized momenta, and you can represent that whole system as a single point on a phase space. So that is called the state of the system. That is the representative point of the system. So you are representing that whole system as just a single point in this phase space. So what do we mean by representation? So just let me give you a quick analogy. Just as we are studying, we are using Google Maps in our mobile phone. So in Google Maps, when you book Ola or Uber ride, the Ola or Uber ride comes, and you are watching on the Google Map, the ride comes and comes and comes, it comes near to you. So when you are seeing that Ola or Uber's car in your mobile phone, it is not actual Ola or Uber car. You can break your mobile phone, but the windows of that car won't break. Only the screen of your mobile phone will break. So it is a representation of actual system, which is somewhere out. So this, we are talking about the representation of actual system, which is somewhere outside. So this, if we know how Ola and Uber is moving, with how much velocity and with what is its position at every time instant, then we will be knowing complete state of that Ola Uber driver. And since we know its complete state, we don't have to call him and ask him, भैया किधर पहुंचे, कब आओगे भैया, अच्छा भैया यहाँ जाना है, यहाँ खड़ा हूँ मैं, वो सब नहीं बताना पड़ेगा. So just if you know the state, that means position and momentum of that car, your mobile does the calculation for you and it tells you that the car is here. It will reach to you in 2 or 3 minutes or whatever the time is there. So the tracking is possible because we know car's microstate and we represent that microstate in our mobile app through that point where the car is moving. Car is shown moving in the map. So that is how we represent that actual system. And this is kind of similar thing. Actual system may be a gas inside a container, maybe something else, maybe anything. But if we are representing that system as a point inside a phase space. Now, generally what we do is we do not just talk about the single system. We talk about infinitely many mental copies of the system to begin with, because it is a lot easier to understand because we can't see that how these particles are changing as time progresses, because it is difficult. So what we do is we make infinitely many mental copies of the system, and we call the collection of those infinitely many copies which has same appearance, same macro state, same all the parameters, that pressure, volume, temperature, everything, all macroscopic parameters are same, but the microscopic parameters are different. We call that ensemble of system. So now we know the idea of ensemble. And since in each and every ensemble at a specific time, there are different microstates, so different representative points corresponding to each system. So this is the second system of the ensemble. This is the third system of the ensemble. There are so many systems in the ensemble. So each system has different microscopic state. So each system can be represented by different points inside the phase space. Now the phase space is not our normal space, that is x, y, and z coordinate. It is the position and momentum space, and this position is not the normal position, it is generalized position. So by generalized position, it can be the position in spherical coordinates, cylindrical coordinates, parabolic coordinates, any coordinates. So this position can be anything, just as we took the example of uh, we took the example of uh, sorry, just be on time from tomorrow. Try to join earlier if the network issue comes at the last moment, because this a little bit breaks the focus. So just try to be on time next time. Okay. So what I was talking about? I was talking about, can anybody uh, I was talking about something? Uh,
Generalized position.
yes. So they are generalized positions. Thank you. So generalized position can be anything. It is not just the position of the car. It can be anything. Just as we are talking about the pendulum, its generalized position can be given by theta only. So looks like pendulum is moving in two dimensions. Just it is moving in two dimensions, but you can define the position of the bob of the pendulum just by the theta. So its generalized position is just theta, and the momentum is momentum in the theta direction. So generalized position, generalized momentum are given like this. And since for so many particles, this phase space is also multidimensional, so we call it hyperspace, not three-dimensional, four-dimensional space. It is hyperspace. So many dimensions are there. And I will, from today onwards, I'll try to show it like this, hyperspace, because so many axes are there. Just we cannot visualize those axes. But since there are so many axes, so I'll be trying to draw it like this. So many perpendicular axes we are using to draw it, but the main part that we can visualize is this much. On this board we can visualize two-dimensional part. On this room where you are sitting, where I am sitting, we can visualize three-dimensional parts, but we cannot visualize something more because our mind is trained for three dimensions only. So we know something about ensemble. There are system of there are collection of systems having same macroscopic state but different microscopic states, that is called ensemble. So for an ensemble there are collection of points, and since we know there are collection of points, we talked about density distribution, and the density distribution is rho uh, as a function of q, p, and t. This we call density distribution function. Now let's talk something about density distribution function. We talked something about that yesterday. So what do we mean by this density distribution function rho, q, p, and t? So if we take a point in the phase space, if we take a point, let's take blue color, and if we take a point qp on the phase space, and if you take a small, tiny, small volume around that point. So this volume is not in three dimension. Since I am out of my drawing, I cannot draw, and you cannot even visualize a figure for more than four dimensions. So drawing is not for three dimensions, it is in multiple dimensions. Just like in three dimension, if we want to enclose a point, so my hand, this point is a point. So if you want to need a box, so to enclose this point in f dimensions, we are talking about f dimensions, we need an f dimensional surface. We need a surface which covers this point. So it is not just a cube, it is f dimensional surface which will cover this point completely. So that point's volume is given by d gamma, and this d gamma is given by pi I equal to 1 to f delta qi delta pi. So what is this pi? I will be using this notation quite a few times today. So let me just talk about this also. This what do we mean by sigma? Sigma I equal to 1 to n. If you are there, sigma I equal to 1 to n. It means that you are putting the values of n from sorry I. Sigma I equal to 1 to n I. So what do we mean by that? Let's talk about something. This is some mathematics. So I'm writing it here. sigma I equal to 1 to n I. It means that you are just changing the values of I and adding these things. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus up to plus n. So you're just adding these things. Okay. Now what do I mean by pi? If pi I equal to 1 to n is given, it means you are into I of I is given. So you are just taking values of I and multiplying it with the next value. You are not adding, but you are multiplying it with the next value. So you are multiplying till the value of n. So what you are doing here is you taking I equal to 1. So delta Q1, delta P1 into delta Q2, delta P2, delta Q3, delta P3 up to delta QF, delta PF. This is d tau. This is volume element of the whole space that we drew to cover this point. And what does this rho QPT mean? It means that if you multiply it with d tau, then the number of points in this region, number of representative points in this region is given by this multiplication. This is the actual meaning of density distribution function. It shows you the density, how the density is distributed at different Q, different P at different times. So it shows you something like this. So this is the actual meaning of density distribution function. I again want to emphasize that you cannot visualize these things. So don't try to visualize these surfaces. I am just drawing it so that you can at least have some clue. But always know that these drawings are not accurate. You can draw anything, but knowing that these drawings are not accurate because you cannot visualize this f dimension for more than 3 dimensions. Okay, so you cannot visualize this, but I hope you are getting the idea of how many points are enclosed inside this is given by this. This is the number of points per unit volume. This rho QPT decides that, and that's what we call density distribution function. Yes. And again, these are not actual systems, they are representation of systems. Some systems are there, these guys are representation of systems. So there can be many points inside this region which are state points. So let me draw it like this. The point QP is shown in this color. In green color, I am showing the state points which represents the state inside this cube. So this delta n is given by this number of points inside this cube. So this is what it is. Okay. Now let's move forward for today's class. Now, what happens as time passes? So how does the density distribution varies as the points moves in phase space? So we are talking about some specific time right now. So as time passes, what happens? So as time passes, let's talk about the single state. As time passes, it is QI axis and it is PI axis. As time passes, this state also moves in a phase space. And let's say that at time t equal to t, the state was at this point. The representation of the state was at this point, and at time t equal to t plus delta t, the representation of state was at this point. So the state moved in the phase space. This is called the trajectory of the trajectory in the phase space. So what we are talking about? We are talking about something like this. Okay, a real system was there. All the molecules in it were moving, and as time passed, they moved through this trajectory. So as time passes, these states, the representative points moves, and how do they move? These points moves these representative points or phase points. Representative points or phase points moves in accordance with Hamilton's equations of motion. Now, is it something new to you guys? No, you have listened to this in first 4 lectures, but let me again show you some glimpse of what is Hamilton's equation of motion. So let's talk about this simple example. You have a block sitting on a frictionless surface, and if you apply a force, some force, let's say 25 Newton onto this block, and this block has mass 5 kilogram, what will be its acceleration of this block? Its acceleration will be 5 meter per second square. This is simple Newton's law that I applied, F equal to ma. This is simple Newton's law. Now this Newton's law is actually changed, can be changed as some differential equation. So it can be changed at d square x by dt square. So this is some differential equation which shows the trajectory of this particle, how this particle will move as time passes. So this Newton's law gives us that. But what happens is these Newton's laws are good for Cartesian coordinates. They can be applied for spherical and cylindrical coordinates, but the maths is really difficult. The mathematics is really difficult. Also, we have to talk about vectors in Newton's laws of motion. This force is a vector, this acceleration is a vector. So we have to talk about vectors, and it makes our life difficult. So what Joseph Louis Lagrange and a guy called Hamilton, they decided that let's make our own system where we don't have to deal with the vectors, we have to deal with just the energy of the particles, and we'll be dealing with those, and let's try to make these kind of equation of motion for those systems. So Hamilton decided to make those systems, and Lagrange also did that. You will be studying those parts in your classical mechanics for physics students. You will be studying those parts in your classical mechanics in future, or maybe you are studying it right now, I don't know. But Lagrange and Hamilton tried to do that, but Hamilton's equation of motion, so they both tried to do that, both succeeded. Hamilton's equations of motion looked like this. So they looked like this: Qi dot equal to del H by del Pi, and Pi dot equal to minus del H by del Qi. So it is just like that. What is H? H is the Hamiltonian of the system. It means the total energy, kinetic. This T represents the kinetic energy plus the potential energy. So it is kinetic energy plus the potential energy of the system. It is called H, Hamiltonian of the system. And here the I ranges from 1 to F. All the dimensions are covered. So this Qi dot is known as generalized velocity, since x dot is dx by dt, and this x dot is dx by dt, we know it as a velocity, but since q is a generalized coordinate, Qi dot is generalized velocity, and Pi dot is time derivative of generalized momentum. So Qi dot is generalized coordinate, generalized velocity, and time derivative of generalized momentum. So these are the things. These guys are known as Hamilton's equation of motion, and these are going to be really, really helpful to us. So let's name this equation. So they are just like Newton's laws of motion, but they are in some other notations and with some easy terms where no vectors are there, thankfully. So let's number this equation star. Okay. So these points move themselves in accordance with Hamilton's equation of motion. Just like this block was moving itself in accordance to Newton's laws of motion, it also moves in accordance to Hamilton's equation of motion. But these points in phase space moves in accordance with Hamilton's equation of motion. So you can know their position and momenta if you can solve these two equations for any system. That's what we were talking about. So this is all what you need to know for now. Okay. Yes. So since these points move, this one point is moving, there are so many points, so many representative points of the system. Since one point is moving, all the points are moving, because in complete ensemble, all the systems are moving in the phase space. All the systems representations are moving in the phase space. And as time passes, suppose initially the system was like this. All the points were inside this region of the phase space. This is Qi, this is Pi, as at a time t equal to t. So at time t equal to t plus delta t, all these points moved in somewhere new positions, and their boundary also got distorted. Let's say that their boundary also got distorted, because all the points will not have the equal velocity. These guys have more velocity compared to this, because here is the momentum, here is the generalized coordinate. For same generalized coordinate, these guys have more momentum than these guys, so these guys will be traveling a little larger, these guys will be traveling a little slower. So what I'm talking about is, just don't focus on this, just focus on my drawings, that as time passes, all of these points which were inside this will be moving to a new position, and into, maybe for general purposes, they will transform themselves into a new shape, because their representations are moving. So as time passes, these things will happen, and if these things will happen, the density of phase points will change. The density of phase points will change. Okay, if this things happens, the density of the free space will change. Yes, definitely it will change. So we want to know, so what is our purpose for the lecture? We want to know how density changes as in the phase space. We want to know how this density will change, or what will be the amount of change in density per unit time. We want to know this. So if density distribution function is like this, we want to know how much the density will change per unit time. Now here I'm using partial derivative, not the complete derivative. So I want to know how much QP and T. I want to know how much the density, what does it mean physically? If anybody of you can explain, what is del rho by del T mean if rho is a function of QP and T? Anybody of you can point it out?
Sir,
Yes.
the partial derivative of rho with respect to t.
Yes. Somewhat more geometrically or physically, if you can explain this.
Rate of change
Yes.
of rho with respect to t.
Just rate of change of rho with respect to T, or we have to keep something.
Instantaneous.
We have to keep these two guys constant. So it is rate of change of rho, but if you keep these two Q and P constant, then this gives us the rate of change of rho. So this is called partial derivative. So you have to keep these two guys constants, Q and P, and the rho changes. This number tells you that how rho changes at a fixed point. So if you are just standing on this point, so if you are, let's say you are an alien, you can shrink, you are an ant-man, let's say, and you can shrink your size to atomic level, and you are sitting on this at this point, and you are watching that how the density is changing at this point, then it is given by this number. As time passes, at this single point, how density is changing. This is given by this del rho by del T, and we want to know that some of the points are, so maybe this point is in this region, so all the points traveled from here to here, all the points traveled from here to there. And if you are sitting and watching this point, then at per unit time, this point's density might have changed, and we want to figure out how it's changed mathematically. So today's lecture is going to be a little bit mathematically advanced. So I want everybody's attention, quite a clear attention. And since it is already half an hour, it is all recap. So I'll be needing 1 more hour. So I'll be needing your attention for 1 more hour, since I'm teaching a little bit slowly today. So all physics students, if you find it really easy, then kindly sleep. You are allowed to sleep. But all those students who don't understand the mathematics, you are advised to wake up. Yes. So this is how rho changes at a fixed point. This is what it shows. That's why it is called partial derivative. And there is something called perfect derivative. We'll talk about that. Yes. Not perfect derivative, the complete derivative. So we'll talk about that in time. So we want to know how this density in the phase space changes by considering a stationary volume. So it means that you have a phase space. You have a phase space. You consider a stationary volume inside the phase space. So your whole system, the representation of whole ensemble, all points is moving from here to here, let's say. And you keep a stationary volume in between somewhere. And what you need to know is how the density changes in the stationary volume. So in the stationary volume, what do we mean by stationary volume? This volume won't change. It won't even move. It is there. And we want to know the rate of change of density in the stationary volume. So it is del rho by del T. We want to know the del rho by del T. And how will we figure it out? We'll try to figure this out. How many representative how will we figure it out? So how many representative points enter inside the system, and how many representative points leave from the system? So if there are n1 points entering into the system, n2 points leaving outside the system, then n1 minus n2 will give us how many points are still there inside the system per unit time. If we are talking per unit time, n1 points entered and n2 points left through the system, then n1 minus n2 will give me how many points entered per unit time, and how many points enter per unit time. If we know how many points entered, then we know the volume of this cube. We divide it by the volume of this cube, and we know the density, how the density changed per unit time. So this is what my purpose is going to be. If you don't understand till now, I'll be explaining this part in a little bit more rigorous mathematics, but I want your complete attention. So this is my purpose for the lecture. We want to know how many representative points entered and how many of them left, and if we subtract them and divide it by the volume of this cube, then what we will be getting, if we divide it by the volume of this cube, let's say it is delta gamma, then we will be getting density of points per unit volume, per unit time, sorry. Density of representative points, increment or decrement, whatever it is this. If this number is negative, it means the density of representative points is decreasing per unit time, or if this number is positive, it means the density is increasing per unit time. That's what we want to figure out. This is our purpose, clear and cut purpose for this lecture. And let's talk about this. It will be very good mathematics, and you have to stick with me. Yes. So consider a hypervolume. Let's talk about this. A hypervolume. In your book, the derivation is given, but it is lot more confusing. So try to follow my notes and the book together. So in my notes, you will be understanding the derivation, then go and read the book to understand more about it if there is something. And this is how you should learn. So my lecture will support the book and the book will support my lecture. Yes. So consider a hypervolume. We'll consider a hypervolume d gamma, and the size of the volume is I equal to 1 to f delta of qi delta of pi. This is the size of the volume. This is a hypervolume inside a phase space. It is this volume that we were talking about, this volume of this hypersurface. Okay. Consider a stationary hypervolume. This should be a good word. So hypervolume is not moving, it is there. Okay. Now, if this is the hypervolume, where is it located? It is located at qi and qi plus delta qi. In between this, it is located in between, not at. In between qi and qi plus delta qi, q1 and q1 plus delta q1, q2 and q2 plus delta q2, up to pf and pf plus delta pf. It is located somewhere around those regions. So what do we mean by this is, let's take the example of 2 dimensions. This is example, so I'm just boxing it. It is not relevant, not related to our derivation. So this is just example. So x and y axis are there. Then if we want to know a small area, we want to construct a small area, then that area is between x and x plus delta x, and it is between y and y plus delta y. So this is the area between these points. So this is the area. So, and if you multiply delta x into delta y, you will find eventually this area. So this is how we did it. It is located between these points and we cannot visualize it. So we are trying to visualize it in 2 dimensions. So it is located between all these points. So the number of phase points inside this volume, inside this hypervolume, is given by delta m, and how much it should be? It is q, p, t, and d gamma. This is the number of phase points inside this hypervolume. This is given by this, and therefore change in number of representative points or phase points inside this hypervolume per unit time is given by d by dt of delta n, because it is I want to know the change of this number per unit time. That's why I divided it by dt. So change of this number divided by unit time, that means divided by dt, is equal to this d tau is stationary, it is not changing with time. So where will be this derivative will be applicable? It will be applicable on the rho, and since rho is a function of three things, but we want only time derivative, so we are applying partial derivative. So del rho qpt, it is a function of qpt d gamma, and let's name this guy equation number 1. It will be very helpful. So what does it tell me? It tells me that how many more how if you consider a volume, then how much the number of molecules or number of phase points are changing per unit time. तो एक वॉल्यूम आपने लिया है, उसमें कितने फेज पे पॉइंट्स चेंज हो रहे हैं एक सेकंड में, और एक 100 सेकंड में, या कोई भी यूनिट टाइम आपने लिया है, वो यूनिट टाइम में कितने फेज पॉइंट्स चेंज हो रहे हैं, तो कितने एंटर हो रहे हैं और कितने जा रहे हैं, उन दोनों को आप सब्ट्रैक्ट करोगे, सो यू आर गोइंग टू गेट दिस नंबर. So change in number of phase points inside this hypervolume per unit time is given by this in mathematical language. Yes. So this change can be calculated in some other way also. कौन सा दूसरा रास्ता है? So it is this change is given due to the points entering the hypersurface minus the points leaving the hypersurface. This is a good way. This is another way to calculate the same change, and what we will do is we will calculate the change by these means, and then we will equate it with this, and from this we will find del rho by del t. That's what we want to find. Okay, so number of points entering minus number of points leaving. So I just try to make a small hyperspace here. Let's talk about some example of this whole process here. So hopefully all of you are sitting inside a room. All of you are sitting inside a room, and in that room you receive radio signals. You definitely receive radio signals and microwave signals. That means your mobile phone is working on the microwave signals, and your radio in your mobile phone FM is working on the radio signals. So in your room you are receiving radio signals. That means radio signals are one of the wavelengths. Radio signals are actually made of one of the wavelengths in the electromagnetic radiation spectrum. So they are one kind of radiation, radio waves are. And since they are electromagnetic radiation, you can also consider them as photons, the particles of light. So what you are getting inside the room where you are sitting is, from one face of the room some photons are coming, those photons are leaving from the other face of the room. Similarly, from one face of the room some photons are coming, some photons are leaving from the other face of the room. Similarly, from one face of the room photons are coming, those photons are leaving from the other face of the room. So how many photons are changing inside this room? You calculated it by this equation. You calculated that by this equation, how many photons are changing inside the room. But now what you want to do is, number of photons entering through this side minus number of photons leaving through this side will give you the number of photons staying inside the room, because all the photons entering from this side will exit from this side, all the photons entering from this side exit from this side. You are taking subtractions, so eventually you are adding all the photons entering and adding all the photons leaving and taking subtractions between those two. This must give you the number of photons staying inside this room per unit time, if you take everything per unit time. So this is what really we want to do. Okay, so let's do it. Suppose this is a hyperspace, and let's take a simple case of hyperspace, Q1 and P1. These two, all other axes we are not taking into considerations, and we want to know number of phase points entering through this side at Q1 equal to constant, and number of points leaving through this side. So let's talk about leaving, not from here, talk about leaving from here. Number of points leaving at the point Q1 plus delta Q1. So this is point Q1, this is point Q1 plus delta Q1. So number of points entering from Q1, number of points entering at Q1 minus number of points leaving at Q1 plus delta Q1 will give you the number of points staying due to this transition. Now there will be, you must be having question के sir कोई particle इधर से आया और पीछे से निकल गया, तो yes, that is possible. So what we will do is we will add all the coming particles and we will add all the going particles, and then we will subtract. But initially we want to do it to simplify our mathematics. For the simplest case in one dimension, coming at Q1 equal to constant, leaving at Q1 plus delta Q1. q1 equal to q1 plus delta q1. So at this constant plane, this is the simplest mathematics we want to do, and this is the other way to calculate the same change. So the number of points, so let's do some mathematics. Number of points entering per unit area, per unit time, sorry, per unit time, entering per unit time from phase q1 equal to constant is equal to, I'm just writing it as nq1, number of points entering per unit time from phase q1 equal to constant. You can write it like this: q, a row at q1, a row. Okay, I'll be writing it as row q1 dot delta q2 delta q3 up to delta pf. So here we considered everything from q2 q3 up to qn, qf, and then p1 up to pf. So this number actually, I'll be writing it in shorthand like this, but what it actually means is delta of q2 up to delta of qf and delta of p1 up to delta of pf. For p1 it starts from for p it starts from p1, but for q it starts from q2 because q1 is already taken care here. So this gives me number of points entering per unit time from phase q1 equal to constant. Now if you have any question, this is q1 p1 and this point is q1 plus delta q1. Number of points entering from this side is given by this. Now we want to find number of points leaving. If you have any question, I am just stopping here.
Sir,
Hmm?
sir, I did not understand how this last expression came.
Thank you for asking this question. So I really knew that this will be the question. So how is that? Okay, this definitely should be the question. Thank you for asking this question. Otherwise, I would have gone and nobody would have objected. Yes. So how is that? How this expression came? So let me just give you a small example, a really small example. There are some particles inside this. Just forget that example for a moment. There are some particles inside this cylinder. All the particles are moving in this direction. This is, let's say, x direction. And this area of cross section of this cylinder is A for the time being. All the points are moving in the x direction with velocity Vx. Now, who asked me the question? Kindly tell me your name.
Sir, Vishrut.
Okay, Vishrut. Vishrut, kindly tell me, what do you understand by the word velocity? What is velocity?
Rate, how much displacement an particle is traveling per unit time.
Okay, per unit time. So yes. So can I say that this particle will travel Vx distance in 1 second or per unit time?
Yes, sir.
Every particle, let's say, has velocity in x direction equal to Vx. So if I want to know that how many particles are crossing this cross-sectional area, which is also cross-sectional area, which is also A, and there are all the particles till here inside this box. So there are so many particles inside the cylinder, and what I want to know is how many particles will cross this cross-sectional area per unit time. So can I tell that if you take a surface similar to this, sorry for my drawing, all are circles actually. If you see the cylinder from the front side, it looks like this. So all are circles. So I'm trying to plot it in 3 dimensions. So all the particles who are sitting on this plane, and the plane is at the distance Vx away from this cross section, all the particles sitting on this plane will travel this much distance in 1 second. All the particles, because they are flowing with a constant velocity Vx. So all the particles sitting on this plane will travel a distance Vx in 1 second. So all the particles on this plane will definitely cross this cross section. Now my question is, all the particles sitting here will travel the distance Vx, so they will also definitely cross the cross section. All the particles sitting here will travel distance Vx, so they will also definitely cross the cross section. So actually all the particles sitting inside this volume will definitely cross this cross sectional area. Are we clear, Vishnu?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I want to find the number of particles crossing this cross sectional area. So here, number of particles If a particle is here, will it be able to cross this cross-sectional area in unit time?
No, sir.
No. Okay. I hope everybody else understood this argument. It is really important that everybody of you understand this argument, because it is very crucial for our discussion today's discussion. So number of particles crossing this cross-sectional area, let's tell this cross-sectional area, crossing cross-sectional area A per unit time will be given as all the particles inside the volume, and how much is the volume? How much is the volume of this cylinder? The volume is A times Vx. The volume of this cylinder is A times Vx, because A is the cross-sectional area and Vx is the length of the cylinder. This is how much the volume is, and N is the number density of the particles. Means number of particles per unit volume is number density, and you know how much the volume the cylinder makes, and you multiply both of those and you know how many particles are crossing this. If the particle is sitting here, it won't cross, because it does not have the enough velocity to cross this. It will reach till this point. It will not be able to cross the surface that we are talking about. So this is the total number of particles crossing this cross-sectional area A per unit time. Are we all clear on this? If you have any doubts in this, just ask me. Otherwise, I'll be just using this and the proof that we have. Yes. Anybody has any doubts? We're waiting for 5 seconds. Okay. So everybody is clear. In our case, the number density of particles is given by rho. And in our case, this Vx is given by q1 dot, because it is the velocity at this plane, and velocity at this plane at q1 will be given by q1 dot, and this Vx is given by q1 dot, and the area, which is area of cross section due to all other surface, is given by delta of q, because particle was moving in one dimension. The area is actually the area of cross section, and area of cross section is actually made up of all these surfaces. In this our higher dimensional example, in 3-dimensional example, area was made of 2 dimensions. So in higher dimension example, the area is made up of, in f dimensional example, area is made up of f minus 1 dimensions. So this is f minus 1 or 2f minus 1 dimension. Okay, so in 2f dimensional space, the area is made up of 2f minus 1 surfaces, and since this area is delta q2 up to delta pf, so this product tells us that how many particles are entering. So we can take a point, a plane, from outside of which a plane at a distance of q1 dot, and outside of this plane no particle will be able to enter into this box. So if we take this plane and this volume, this volume is this much, q1 dot times all of these guys, and rho is the number density of states or representative points inside this volume, and all those volumes will be able to cross. Are we all clear on this formula right now? Still, if you have any doubts,
yes, sir.
kindly ask. Yes, anybody other than Vishruth? If you have any doubts, kindly ask, because this is, though it is slow, but it is required to understand. Okay. Maybe because I'm teaching it for the first time, I don't know if in which sections you guys have the doubts. So I'm stopping it at every possible section. So kindly ask me the doubts if you have. Okay. So we knew this, that number of points entering through this section is this. Now we did some mathematics. Let's do some more mathematics. So that some more mathematics is number of particles leaving through this surface, q1 plus delta q1. Number of particles leaving through this surface, number of particles, phase points leaving through q1 plus delta q1 equal to constant is given by n q1 plus delta q1 equal to I did I number this equation? No, I didn't. So let me number this. Let me give this equation a number 2. Okay, and this guy will be giving some number, and this number of phase points leading to this area is n of q1 plus delta q1, and it is going to be equal to rho q1 dot plus del by del q1 rho q1 dot delta q1 into delta q2 up to delta pf. This is the number of phase points leaving through this area. Now these two equations, this equation and this equation are written directly in your book. So I am also writing it directly. And now if any, now this is equation number 3. Let me give this equation number 3. Now anybody of you has any doubts, kindly ask. After some more mathematics, if you have any doubts, kindly ask. This is number of phase points leaving through the surface. Any doubts?
Sir, can you explain once again why don't we consider delta Q1 in the latter part?
In this one?
Yes.
Okay, so this area, did you understand this example, n into a into vx?
Yes.
Okay, so in this area, what do we have is we do not have any component in from this direction. The area is entirely made from the other two dimensions. In this dimension, there is no component of area. In this So, okay, what do I want to know is, if the particles are crossing through some cross-sectional area, the particle's velocity in that direction will construct a So what if this was a 3-dimensional example, this cross-sectional area is 2-dimensional, like my hand. If it is a cylinder, this pen you can consider as a cylinder. So this cross-sectional area of the pen is 2-dimensional. Though the cylinder itself is a 3-dimensional figure, the cross-sectional area is 2-dimensional. So in our phase space also, this part is given by velocity in q1 direction. This cross-sectional area, it means the surface which is being constructed by all other dimensions, not that dimension, not this. So if we talk, let's talk about this. Let me give you a simple example here. After that example, if you don't understand, I'll be trying to explain it to you tomorrow. Just for today, let me explain it to you like this: x, y, and z. Okay, we took this as an x-axis, so let's take this as a y-axis, and this is the z-axis. Now the area was in the yz plane, as we all know. Area was in the yz plane, and our velocity was in the x plane. So how did we find the total number? Number we found out equal to density times the velocity in x direction into the area in yz direction. This is how we found out, right? Are we clear on this? The area
Yes,
was,
sir.
and that's how we are doing it there also. So rho velocity in q1 direction into the area in all other direction. Now since there are so many other directions, so area in all other direction is given by this number, delta q2 times delta p.
Okay, sir. Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just if you don't understand still, just stay after the lecture and we'll be discussing it again. Okay, I'll just
Okay,
try
sir.
to stay. Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, I hope you understand how this number came. Yeah, come on, ask questions. I know you don't understand it. I know, even I didn't understood it. since I saw it for the first time. I had to work for I had to work on this equation for almost an hour to understand how it came. Okay, somebody asked.
So can you
Somebody
just
asked when
repeat it?
only.
Repeat it. Can you
Which
just
part?
repeat this equation like if you have derived it, right? So
Yes.
just can you go through the term and give us the glimpse like what this term represents? So it can
Okay.
be easy
Yeah.
to understand.
So
That way we can.
okay.
That
So
way
my
we.
question is just a second. Yes. Actually, my question is, did you understand this or not? This is the question. Okay. If I am a teacher and I can write this on the board, or are you all of you are in the okay? We know this mode, or oh, what did he wrote? We don't understand mode. Which of the two modes are you guys in?
Second mode.
Second mode. Yes. So thank
Second
you
From
mode.
my
because
perspective,
I
second
know
mode.
I was also in second mode when I was a student. Even till day before yesterday, I was in the second mode. I didn't understood this equation. So how's that? Again. So how I wrote this equation? Let's talk about this. So I hope that everybody of you know this, that f of x plus delta x, let's say, equal to f of x plus uh, del f of x by del x into delta x. Anybody of you know this? You can ask. You can ask
Yes,
if
sir.
you don't. Yes, some
Yes,
of
sir.
you
We
know.
know this. Yes.
Okay, how are you getting this? Can anybody of you explain?
Sir, we can verify this using Taylor series.
Can you give me an example? Because since as I know, the Taylor series looks like this: f of x minus x naught equal to uh, f of x equal to, sorry. Okay, let's write the Taylor series for f of x. F of x equal to f of x naught plus f prime of x naught plus f double prime of x naught by 2 factorial. Okay, here the multiplication is with x square plus with x cube f triple prime of x naught by 3 factorial. So I don't know how you are
So
getting.
limiting part. Like we use the limiting part.
Yes,
Use limit
how will you limit this?
to limit. Sir, like I'm talking about the not the Taylor series. No, I'm talking about the initial equation you wrote. We can just
Uh,
say that f of x, like f of x plus delta x minus f of x
Thank you,
divided by
thank you,
delta x. That thing,
thank you, thank you.
the limit part.
Yes, thank you. So this is not a Taylor series, definitely not a Taylor series. This is simple definition of differentiation. Now, when you write this df by dx, how do you write it? Df of x by dx. In the mathematics, let's go to 11th standard mathematics. It looks like this: delta x tends to 0, f of x plus delta x minus f of x upon delta x. Now, if the delta x is so small, then we can neglect this delta x tends to 0 because delta x itself is small. So for small delta x, you can write it like this. How am I writing this? Delta x, you just multiply it here. Delta x d f of x by dx, and f of x you are bringing it on this side. So f of x plus this equal to f of x plus delta x. Since delta x itself is a small number, we are not taking the limit. Without limit also, this equation is equally valid for small delta x. And if delta x tends to 0, this is exactly correct equation. This is exactly correct equation. So this is the small proof of this equation. This is from 11th standard differentiation. This is not a Taylor series. But still, thank you for answering. Because when I was a student, yes, let me tell you, when I was a student in my BSc and MSc, I used to think that this is a Taylor series. I don't know why I used to think it like this, but I used to think that this is a Taylor series. But when I thought about it few days ago, it is not actually a Taylor series. So if you said it is a Taylor series, I were you when I was a student. Still 10-15 days ago, I was at your position. So you are way far ahead. But if you can see from this, it is not a Taylor series. So yes, I wanted to break that myth only because I had that myth. So I knew that many of you will have that myth. That's why I wanted to break. Okay, this is for small delta x. You can write it like this. So what I'm talking about, how I wrote this term, that's what I was talking about. So here will be some mathematics. So at Q1 rho at Q1 is let's draw this phase space. This is Q1 axis, this is P1 axis, this is Q1 point, and this is Q1 plus delta Q1 point. And here there is another surface. Here the rho is changed because rho depends on Q. So rho is rho of Q1 plus delta Q1. It is not just rho of Q1, but it is rho of Q1 plus delta Q1. And rho of Q1 plus delta Q1, you can write it like this: Q1 plus delta Q1. You can write it in the same manner: rho at Q1 plus del rho at Q1 by del Q1 into delta Q1. You can write it like this. And similarly, the velocity is this at this point. So here the velocity Q dot is also not actually at the Q1, but it is at Q1 plus delta Q1. Velocity is not at Q1. Velocity at Q1 was Q1 dot, but it is not at Q1. It is at Q1 plus delta Q1. So you can write it like this: so Q dot at Q1 plus del by del Q1 into Q dot at Q1 into delta Q1. So you can write it like this, just separating these two things. You can write it like this: rho you can write it like this, Q dot you can write it like this. And since this number at Q1 plus delta Q1 is nothing but the product of these two guys, it is nothing but the product of these two guys. Therefore, this number at Q1 plus delta Q1 is nothing but the product of rho at Q1 plus delta Q1 into Q dot at Q1 plus delta Q1 into all other factors, delta Q2 up to delta Pn. This is the same thing I wrote ago also. So this is the same thing: rho Q1 dot delta all the other areas. So here the rho was at Q1 and Q dot was also at the Q1. Q dot means the velocity in the Q1 direction was also at the Q1. But here these two terms are at this plane, and because rho was changing, rho was a function of Qp and T. I wrote it somewhere. Rho was a function of Qp and T. Rho changes its value. So rho changes its value, and Q1 also, the velocity in this direction also changes its value at different plane. So these two guys can be written like this. That's how you can change this. So it is rho at Q1. And how do we write rho at Q1? Rho at Q1 we initially wrote at rho only, as rho only, because हमने जब यहाँ पे रो की बात करी थी तो हमने उसको रो ही लिखा है. तो हम रो एट Q1 को रो ही बोलेंगे और Q डॉट एट Q1 को Q1 डॉट बोलेंगे. जहां भी Q डॉट एट Q1 दिखेगा मतलब इसको हम Q1 डॉट बोलेंगे. Q dot at Q1 is Q1 dot. So Q dot at Q1 is Q1 dot, and rho at Q1 is rho, nothing but rho. So it is rho. I'm just using this equation. So rho plus del rho by del Q1 into delta Q1. Rho plus del rho by del Q1 to delta Q1, and this is Q1 dot. This is Q1 dot plus del by del Q1 dot into delta Q1 plus del by del Q1 dot into delta Q1 and all other delta Q2 up to delta Pn. And let's multiply these two guys. So rho Q1 dot plus rho times del Q1 dot upon del Q1. I'm just taking this del Q1 common out. This delta Q1 common as out. This delta Q1 I'm taking it common, plus del rho, I'm taking this multiplication of this term with this term. So I should take Q1 dot first. Q1 dot into del rho by del Q1, and this delta Q1 was common in both of those terms. And I'm neglecting, this is the product of these two guys, and I'm neglecting the product of delta Q1 times delta Q1. Why I'm neglecting it? Because I expanded these terms by assuming that delta Q1 is small. It is very, very small. It is tremendously small. So if delta Q1 itself is small, if you multiply this guy with the last guy, then it will be delta Q1 square. And if you multiply 0.001 with 0.001, it will be 0.401, which is even smaller. So you don't need to edit. You just you can neglect that term. So you are neglecting that term, and you are writing all other terms as it is, delta Pn. Okay, so you are neglecting here. What I did was neglecting delta q1 square term in this product. Okay, and this is what q1 plus delta q1 is. And if you see this, I hope you know this, d by dz of xy is equal to x dz dy by dz plus y dx upon dz. So this looks like this, x dy by dz plus y dx by dz. So you can write this whole number as something like this, del by del q1 into rho and q1 dot. So you can change it like this, and delta q1 is still there outside the bracket, so you can write delta q1 outside the bracket, and all other terms are still there. So this is n at q1 plus delta q1. Now if you have any doubts, so let me write it also. So n at q1 plus delta q1 is nothing but rho q1 dot plus del by del q1 rho q1 dot delta q1 into delta q2 up to delta pf. So this is how it is, but in your book the statement is directly written. Believe me, no, these kind of mathematics is done and the statement is directly written. So if you need assistance with the mathematics, this is the simple mathematics that was there. Okay, so this was how I wrote that equation. Now let's do simple mathematics. We want to know how many particles came minus how many particles exited from this surface. So it is just a simple matter of doing 2 minus 3. So 2 is rho q1 dot into these numbers, and 3 is rho q1 dot plus some number into these numbers. So I'll be just doing some more, even more mathematics, and doing 2 minus 3, which will be giving me which will be giving me effective number of points entering. Effective number of points entering per second. All I'm talking about is per second. So this, I hope I wrote it per second. I'm talking everywhere about per second, because if you are talking about per second, then only you can multiply it with the velocity. So I'm talking about per unit time. So per unit time, yes, it is definitely needed per unit time. Number of phase points living through this surface per unit time, and here again effective number of points entering per unit time. Is given by 2 minus 3, and 2 minus 3 if you will do, it is q rho q1 dot into delta q2 up to delta pf minus this another number 3, which was rho q1 dot. I have it written, I know it, plus del by del q1 rho q1 dot into delta q1 into delta of q2 up to delta pf. And what you can do is you can multiply it with this, and you can multiply it with this, and these two guys will eventually cancel out. This and this guy will eventually cancel out if you multiply it there. And so what you will be getting is minus of del by del q1 rho q1 dot delta q1 up to delta pf. Now it is from q1 because q1 came from here, and delta q2 and all other were already present. So now it is delta q1 up to delta pf. And this is effective number of points entering per unit time. Now if anybody of you has any questions, kindly ask, because we are moving towards the end of this class. Next 10 to 15 minutes will be ending this class. Now it was all boring mathematics will end, and if time permits, no, time will not permit today. So after all this boring mathematics, we'll see the physics tomorrow, why we did these calculations in the first place. Okay, so but this boring mathematics, if you want to ask any questions for these beautiful mathematics, it is not boring for me, but if it is boring for you, then, but for this beautiful mathematics, if you want to ask any questions, kindly ask at this point. If you are not asking it right now, thinking that maybe it is a question from somewhere else, please stay after the class. Don't go without asking that question. Please ask that question, because it is my duty to teach you. Okay. So even more mathematics was over, and this whole calculation we did it for one surface only. This was for one surface only, which was Q1 and Q1 plus delta Q1. Now there are so many surfaces onto this phase space diagram. Just as an example, there was other surface for P1 and P1 plus delta P1. You can do the same mathematics. Eventually, the effective number of points entering per unit time. In this case, will eventually come out to be, this is Q1, this is P1 axis, and there are many more axes in the phase space. So there are some points entering through this surface, some points leaving through this surface. If you do the same calculation as we did in the Q1 equal to constant case, you will be doing same calculation, and effective number of points entering per unit time in this case will be negative of del by del P1 this time. It will be similar, del by del P1, and rho of P1 dot, because here it was Q1 dot, it will be P1 dot, and this volume will be same, delta of Q1 up to delta of Pf. The effective number of points entering per unit time in this case is equal to this. Therefore, total effective phase points entering per unit time total effective phase points entering per unit time. How should we give this number? It is just, let's take negative out common, I equal to 1 to f. Let's talk about del by del qi, rho qi dot plus because this is also minus, we took minus out common, and this is del by del pi, rho pi dot, and outside of this you have multiplication of delta Q1 up to delta Pf. Okay, this is the multiplication which is common in all the terms. So you can take it out of the sigma and you can multiply this whole sigma each and every time with this. So what you can do is you can use this kind of bracket also. This is total effective phase points entering per unit time. If you have any question in this part, kindly tell me, because this volume is common to all of them, so I took it out and I wrote it like this. And in whole volume, effective number of so this is mathematics for multiple phases. Total number of effective points is this, and from equation number 1 in whole volume, what was equation number 1? Let us go back. We found out something there. Okay, this is equation number 1. This is where we found out that how many phase points per unit time is increasing or decreasing inside that hyper volume. So this is the number of phase points increasing or decreasing, and that number was also giving the same thing. So that equation number 4, let's call this guy also equation number 4. This guy is equation number 4. And equation 4 was also telling the same thing. So equation 1 और 4 दोनों को मिला के हम क्या कर सकते हैं? What we can do is we can write del rho by del t equal to negative. I'll be going to the equation so you know what I'm writing. I equal to 1 to f del by del qi rho qi dot plus del by del pi rho pi dot. This is all it is. So let me go to equation number 1. Here there is the volume term. In equation number 1 also there was a volume term d tau, and d tau is nothing but product of all these guys. So d tau is nothing but product of all these guys, which was the same thing there also. So d tau got cancelled out, and del rho by del t remained in this, and in that other equation number 4 this part remains, which is negative of something like this. So in whole volume, this is the overall change of density, but this looks a little bit scary. This equation looks a little bit scary. So let's make it simple. Let's make it simple. Let's make it simple looking. So now only 5 minutes are remaining of this lecture. So only in these 5 minutes, we'll be doing simple mathematics, very simple mathematics. So del by del Qi, I'm just using the law of multiplication. You are using rho into Qi dot plus rho into del Qi dot by del Qi plus del rho by del Pi into Pi dot plus rho into del Pi dot by del Pi. I'm just using simple mathematics. So you can write this as minus of I equal to 1 to f. Just taking these two terms, similar terms, Qi dot del rho by del Qi and this del rho by del Pi together, and these two guys, the blue light together. I can take out rho common from these two guys. So rho is common. Del Qi dot by del Qi plus del Pi dot by del Pi. And the red part I'm writing is the red pen, del rho by del Qi into Qi dot plus del rho by del Pi into Pi dot. The simple mathematics it was. Now this blue term I'll be calling first term and this term I'll be calling second term. Okay, a little bit more mathematics, that's all it takes. So we know from star we know that Qi dot is del H by del Pi and Pi dot is minus of del H by del Qi. Simple. So del Qi, what do I have here? What do I have here? Del Qi dot by del Qi. So del Qi dot by del Qi equal to del square H by del Qi del Pi. Del Qi del Pi. And what do I have here? Del Pi dot by del Pi. So del Pi dot by del Pi equal to minus of del square H by del Qi del Pi. So here I differentiated with del Pi both the sides. Here I differentiated with del Qi both the sides. And what did I found out? This number this side and this number this side both are same, just a difference of negative sign. So what you can write is therefore del Qi dot by del Qi equal to minus of del Pi dot by del Pi, which implies that del Qi dot by del Qi plus del Pi dot by del Pi is equals to 0. So this first term, this equals to 0. Therefore, first term will go to 0. First term will go to 0. The only part which remains is the second term. And there is some Qi dot here, which we can change it by del H by del Pi. There is some Pi dot here, which we can change it by del H by del Qi. So let's write it like this. So del rho by del T equal to minus of sigma of I equal to 1 to n, 1 to f, sorry. I know it is boring mathematics, I know. Yes, I can sense your feelings. Del rho by del Qi. And in place of Qi dot, what I'm writing is del H by del Pi. And in place of del rho by del Pi, I'm writing del rho by del Pi. It was plus, but I'm writing minus as Pi dot is minus del H by del Pi. So I'm taking that minus out. This is del H by del Qi. Okay, this is minus. And this can be written as something like this, rho H. Simple. This whole bracket, you can write it as this. Oh, I know. Now it looks so simple and sober. This rho and H. Now what is this rho and H? This rho and H is called Poisson bracket. Poisson, this is pronounced as, this is a name of the scientist. You pronounce it as Poisson. So it is Poisson's bracket. And rho h, how do you write it? For f dimensional space, you write it as I equal to 1 to f del rho by del qi and del h by del pi. Then you invert both of these guys. So del rho by del pi and del h by del qi. Just invert those guys and you add it for all the dimensions, and that we call Poisson bracket in classical mechanics. So these terms you have not studied in classical mechanics, I know, but it just remember this. This is a Poisson bracket, and this is how simply you can write this equation. This is called Livolais or Liouville's equation. Liouville's equation. So this is Liouville's equation. Del rho by del t equal to negative of Poisson bracket of rho and h. And you can write the same equation as del rho by del t plus Poisson bracket of rho and h equal to 0. This is the Liouville's equation, Joseph Liouville. There was a scientist called Joseph Liouville, and he came up with this equation. Now, what do we learn from this equation? We'll talk about that tomorrow, because it was a full mathematics day today. And thank you for being there. I don't know how many students are still there, but thank you for being there. It was a day full of mathematics, and why we went through all the mathematics, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So yes. So now if you have got any questions, I am there to answer those questions.